All right. How's config, everybody? I think this is a solid day one. Please join me in welcoming Boz to the stage.
Everybody.
You heard a brief intro already, but I'm so honored, excited to have a chance to sit down with Boz and ask him a bunch of questions. Boz has been at Meta for almost 20 years now and has been an instrumental player in basically all of the efforts that we all think about when we think about the definitional parts of Meta and a constant part of Meta's reinvention. But I think maybe we can just start by diving into it. What's your theory of consciousness?
Wow, it just goes right into it. I like that. It is funny. 25 years ago when I started in computer science, I did not imagine the degree to which my philosophy classes would end up playing a role. But here we are looking at artificial intelligence and asking ourselves the very relevant question, what is consciousness and what's the role that it plays? To get to the question of it, I think I really like the book Douglas Hofstadter wrote called I Am a Strange Loop. And in that, one of the most important concepts is consciousness to him is not a 0 or a 1. It's a whole spectrum from like entirely inert to human consciousness to some bigger thing. And we're no more capable of understanding the bigger thing than an ant is capable of understanding our consciousness. I think everything we've ever done as a species is still very, very close to, if not exactly 0 on that scale. Including the current AIs, but we are maybe inside of our lifetimes going to start to play at the non-zero level of consciousness. There are things I'm really excited about as a tool builder who wants to help people achieve their goals in life. I'm excited about tools that have a theory of mind, that understand what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm excited about tools that have a little bit of agency, maybe not too much agency, but just like the right amount of agency to help on my behalf. So there are a lot of pieces that I'm very excited about, though I don't know how close we are to them.
What would it mean for a tool to have that theory of mind to you?
Yeah, Jan LeCun talks about this a lot. If you take very, very young children, they have an incredible set of capabilities that even our most sophisticated machines lack. Common sense is one of them. That's like a world model. But another one that starts even when infants are pre-verbal, and they can do this with fMRI machines. They can look, if they see an adult attempting a task and repeatedly failing at that task, they feel bad for you. By the way, parents, I'm sorry. That's true though. The mirror neurons fire very early on in our life. We feel anxiety when we watch someone else failing to complete a task that they are attempting. Theory of mind is like having an awareness that outside of yourself is another thing that has its own agency, intention, goals, and you start to try to intuit because it helps you predict the world. All of our tools, all of our cognitive tools, do they help us predict the world and succeed and thrive? And so, given that so much of our world, the entropy in it is created by other beings, we've built up a theory of what that being is going to do next. And for some beings, we have very complete pictures, very complete simulations running in our brains, like of my wife or my children. And sometimes that's somebody we just met, and we're using like a very generic model of who we think they are.
So going back to the tool part of it, I can guess about where that might lead in terms of AI, and maybe we'll get there a bit later. But I guess I'm curious about how these frameworks around consciousness, theory of mind, other frameworks you hold, maybe you can share them, inform your view on the future, and also just 20 years out, like, can you paint a picture of the future that you hope that we can build together?
Yeah, 100%. Look, the North Star that I've always used in the 20 years of product development that I've been doing professionally is just like, find me a human somewhere who has a problem, like, can we do something that helps? And ultimately, they decide. If the tool helps them, they use it. If it doesn't help them, they don't use it. And we can have a lot of nice conversations about this, that, the other thing. It doesn't matter. In the end, do they use it? And so there's a couple frameworks encoded there, one of which is human agency. Like, I really believe humans are responsible for themselves. I believe they're capable stewards of their own self. It's an unpopular view sometimes today. People think of us as pawns being constantly manipulated by endless streams of things. And on the margins, I think there are cases where people are susceptible to those things. But for the most part, most of us are responsible for our own selves, and like we can make good decisions. So you have to believe that like en masse, human adoption of a thing represents a real creation of value that is going to be, whether it's market power or just social power, is real. The second part of it, of then beyond agency, is the capability. Like when you've built that capability and people are using it, what is the net result? Like, are they happier? Are they more productive? Do they have new problems that you have to go solve? This is the framework with which I attack all problems. When you're using that, you start very inside the box. It's just like, cool, here's my product. What's one feature I can change to improve things? That's that's where you start. Over time, you're like, cool, what if the product is wrong? What is a new product I can create to help solve things? We're at the point now with AI, I think, where it's like, what if the entire interaction paradigm is wrong? Like, what if the whole thing is bad? And there's a better way to do all of this than everything we've ever done. And so you just kind of keep pulling the thread on those questions.
Okay, that's a big statement that the entire interaction paradigm that we're all used to is wrong.
Probably is. I mean, what are the chances we got it right? That's not great.
So I guess if you go to sort of your intuition and you project forward, rather than going through each leap at a time, 20 years out is an arbitrary milestone.
Yeah.
Like, what would be your sort of painted picture?
Yeah, it's really hard for me to imagine that in the future I'm going to have to decompose my goals as much as I do today. It seems so natural to us today. I'm like, hey, I'm going to go on a run. I want to listen to Spotify. So I want to listen to this music. I don't want to listen to Spotify. There's music I want to listen to. And I've already started in my head constructing this sequence of tools that I'm going to engage to achieve that goal. And I have to have, all of us have to have a pretty good familiarity. It's like, oh, that song's not available on Spotify. That set of songs, that's only on Tidal, so I got to go over there. We shouldn't have to know any of those things. It's very weird for me to have to understand the UMG music rights ownership structure to listen to the song I'm trying to listen to when I'm just going to work out. And likewise, within the tools, it's like, okay, in this interface, I'm going to swipe and then tap. But if I go to that interface, that's like a tap, 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 right swipe, and then I'm going to do the thing. We've learned all of that, and it's not that hard. I'm not pretending like we're victims of this thing. But it is very weird. Ideally, I would have an intention. I would express that intention as simply as possible, or even have that intention anticipated for me. And all of this would be sorted out without me having to ever engage in the arcane arts of application management. And I think in a 20-year time frame, hopefully in a 10-year time frame, that's very workable. In the 10-year time frame, I feel very confident that we can, on an interface and interaction design paradigm side, not be engaging in these really ticky-tacky pieces. I always kind of laugh about this. We've all had this experience. You're in a window and there's one button. It's the only button around. You go to press that button and you miss it by 2 pixels. And what happens? Nothing, because you didn't touch that button. An infant would look at that and be like, he's obviously trying to touch that button. I don't know. It's the only thing on the screen right now is that button. He wants to touch that button. But the computer's like, no, I'm sorry. You did not touch the button. Therefore, I will do nothing for you. It's just such an arcane thing. So I think in 10 years, we start to get away from those traps. And then in 20 years, I'm hoping it's a very highly anticipatory thing where all I'm doing is offering corrections to a mostly correct plan that has already been laid out for me based on my prior behaviors and what I appear to be intending to do.
So many things we could pull on with that thread. I guess one thing that I think about when you say that is, if you have some middleware, for lack of a better word, that is going to make sure that, it's not click drag over here and clickety click click over here, does that result in less experimentation, less breadth?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I think design has 2 important components in the world. One is an invention piece, which is a 0 to 1 type of thinking. It's a green field. There's no constraints. There's no customers. There's no way to optimize within that framework. The world's your oyster. And in that kind of a world, and I spend a lot of time in spaces like that, you have to have an opinion about the world that opinion has to be more right to more people than not. We would call that good taste, intuition, instinct. And there's people who just have it, and for whatever reason, like their concept of the world is highly resonant with people who've never been exposed to that space, but when they see it, it makes sense. And there's a second part of it, which is like, hey, there exists a foothold, there exists a customer base, a user base, and we can just start to smooth it and round it and shape it collectively in conversation, in dialogue with an audience. And this is also a tremendously important kind of part of design. And we have, as an industry, had a lot more of the second type over the last 10 years, 20 years than we had of the first type. And some of that we just like, if the best thing around is the phone, and it was for 10, 12 years there, then like all you're gonna do is like do glowing rectangles, and all your interface design has basically been dictated to you by a platform. You're in like the optimize space. You're just not in the invention space as much. What's cool about working with atoms, now that I'm doing some physical hardware, what's cool about spatial interfaces like you see in mixed reality or augmented reality, what's cool about the idea of artificial interfaces or generative interfaces is that they are completely green fields. They have none of those constraints. That's very exciting.
I think it's really interesting to frame it that way, as conceptual versus optimization and greenfield versus hill climbing. Because so many of the things that you've done through your career have been greenfield.
Yeah.
You've been the starter person for so many initiatives like Newsfeed, Messenger, Groups, mobile ads, now Oculus, Orion, and how to actually make those into platform technologies. I guess one thing that I think is super interesting about that connective thread is that not only are you reinventing the organization around you at Meta, but you're also in some ways reinventing yourself to go tackle these problems. I'd just be curious to hear your reflections on how you've done that through your career.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful. First of all, how lucky am I? How lucky are we to be at a time in history where you can do this work, and it's tremendously leveraged work. Yeah, I mean, I don't know who's grown more, me or the or the industry. I think there's three parts to this. One part is we work in a surprisingly collaborative industry. I'm not saying people don't experience internal politics or competition or these things, but for the most part, my experience in this industry is one where we're just trying to help each other out. And so I've had a great chance to learn from people, every different project. Just to some degree, the more projects you're on, the more people you're introduced to, the more influences you're able to absorb from. And you can learn from everybody. People who you don't like or don't think are good, now you're learning what not to do. People who you like just think are amazing, now you're able to see that up front. So a lot of it is just the time and the people. The second thing is, I've had a leader with Mark, and not to be obsequious. In fact, let's make fun of him later, just for fun. But I've had a leader in Mark Zuckerberg who has believed in me and believed in taking these big bets and really investing in them beyond all reason, like having true conviction in the change that needs to be made in the world and what's possible, having a genuine level of belief, and that belief in me put me in position to do that. And then the third piece is, and this is probably the most useful thing for anyone in the audience, is like, I just never saw, just like I never saw the products as finished products. I've never believed I've finished a product. It's always just like, that's the next rev, that's the next version of the product. I've never seen myself as a finished product. I've always seen this as like, yep, this is the current iteration, this is the V43. Can't wait till next versions come out. Next year we're gonna fix the bugs. And we'll have some new bugs, it'll be fun. It is a very engineering, computer sciencey way of thinking. If you think arguably the foundation of computer science, Alan Turing's whole premise that the program is data, and therefore the program can iterate on itself. That is like the foundational concept of what differentiates, I think, computer science from many others. It's one of the reasons I think AI will affect computer science before it affects other disciplines, is the program is the data. And I've always taken that approach as well to myself. It's just like, okay, like we can feed this thing back into itself and we can be better. I'm embarrassed. Nobody should feel good about how they were in their 20s. I get that. I feel particularly embarrassed about who I was in my 20s professionally. And as a consequence, that allows you to feel a little bit more proud about who you are today, you know?
Well, I think it's a good thing if every decade you're looking back and you're like, I was a little embarrassed, but I'm doing better now. It's a good thing.
And if you're in your 20s, you're doing fine. But also get better, be better.
I think what's also interesting is as a field, design has gone through reinvention too. And obviously there's so much history to design and so much meta around, meta is a charged word here, but so much around what design is and the craft of design over time. And I think it's a totally different challenge to think about spatial computing and what it means to build for that world. I was super lucky, and thank you for inviting me to see some of the new devices. I apparently can't say much about the really new stuff, but it's fucking awesome. I guess one thing I've been thinking about since having a chance to see some of the work you're doing is, do you think of the role of a designer in the future working on this stuff? Is it more like you're a set designer? Are you a game architect? Is it something else? Like, how should we map the concepts of today to tomorrow?
Yeah, I think the more degrees of freedom we have, the more important design as a discipline is. And this gets back to my earlier comment about taste. And I really want you to think about, in the case of an interface that you're taking with you throughout your day, whether it's smart glasses or it's AI that's ever present in your home for whatever reason, you're not going to have a computer mouse, a touch screen. You're not going to have any direct manipulation interface. You're not going to have a keyboard, right? And those seem like, okay, sure, we've got some new constraints. No, those are profound constraints. Believe it or not, we've never built a computing system that didn't have a direct manipulation interface at some level. I really mean that. Going back to Stanford Research Institute and Xerox PARC, where this paradigm was founded, we have never been in a different paradigm. Not one time. So for you in the audience, as an exercise, go about one day, pick a day, put it on your calendar, and really all day, every single thing you interact with, your microwave, your coffee machine, your toaster oven, your car, your computer, your phone, think about, what am I trying to accomplish right now? What is the job? And how could I accomplish this without touching anything? How could it be done? It's very exciting. These aren't even once in a generation problems. We're talking once every 3 or 4 generation kind of problems. We're talking about the kind of paradigm reinvention that entire swaths of people in our discipline have gone their entire career without that kind of opportunity. We are at the very cusp of it right now. We have a new set of tools in ever-present sensing and mobile compute and artificial intelligence. But we do have a challenge that nobody has solved before. And it wasn't like we didn't try. If you go back to the history of computing and J.C.R. Licklider and Doug Engelbart and Chuck Thacker, they really tried. And we've never done better or different than the one thing we've always used. Yeah, we replaced the mouse for a touch screen, but it's the same application model. It's the same input interaction design paradigm in a different skin. So to get to the question of like, what is the role design plays, it's not set design, it's just because it's spatial, it's not interaction design exclusively. It's design in the purest sense, where you have to create a fully formed opinion and you can't isolate one part of the system. You can't just say, okay, we're going to hold all these parts of the application fixed and just change this. No, you need to design, Reality Labs, these designers have to think about, it's very design-led because they have to think about what is the gesture, what's the feedback the user's getting either visually or audibly or through haptics, and what is the functionality it's unlocking. And those 3 things have to develop together. And then you iterate on, okay, what are the constraints of what we can actually do with the sensors and compute we have? And you're iterating in the space, and you end up with a still very large space of possibility and no North Star, no previous way for a customer what good looks like. And I'm out. And I'm back. Okay. So I do think we're heading into a very design-heavy phase of development. It's very exciting.
I mean, when you're in these new concept spaces entirely, it's almost like you're ungrounded now.
Yeah.
How do you prototype your way through them? And also, we were talking backstage about, my geeky interests and my willingness to like go try the most random of new interfaces, and also like how far that is from your everyday consumer. How do you know that your intuition isn't for the small group of like super early adopters that are designing the future versus what's going to be mass market?
Yeah, you do end up starting with the small group. There's just no other way around it. You have to start designing for yourself. If you can't put yourself... Now, you're not trying to design for yourself in your life. You're trying to put yourself in the shoes of real humans who have real problems. But like, you start there, and it doesn't get you where you need to go, but it gets you close. And you say, okay, what are all the sensors that we could possibly build? And it's EMG, and it's cameras, and it's microphones, and it's all these different things. What are all the problems that we could be trying to solve here? And we try to be very comprehensive. And what are all the inputs? What are all the things? Oh, sorry, we revert the terms. What are all the ways that we're going to give information back to the person who's operating this technology? And it's a huge space. And you start to theorize, what are the useful quadrants? What are the useful areas inside of this space? And you build the craziest hack you can to just give yourself a glimpse at it. And we've built all kinds of things. We've built rooms that had just mesh walls, and you're projecting on them based on, you're wearing a silly hat that has enough information to like figure out where you're looking. We've built all kinds of really crude, rudimentary prototyping things just to give ourselves the faintest glimpse of like whether we should pull the thread on that technology or not, whether we should invest on that input paradigm or not. And you iterate and iterate in that direction. But there is no substitute for good taste. There's no substitute for good design. There's no substitute for somebody who has an intuition as to what is going to be broadly useful. All you really want to do with this step is get close enough to iterate. I kind of joke, I wrote my college thesis on a set of NP-hard problems called constraint optimization problems, where all you can do is pick a random place in the problem space and just climb hills, and you just hope that you start closer to like the Tibetan highlands than you do to like the plains of Kansas. Because if you start in Kansas and you climb the tallest mountain you can find, you're not doing great. And if you start literally anywhere in Tibet, you're going to be fine. Intuition, taste is the thing that allows you to pick better geography to start in. You're still going to have to climb mountains. It's still going to be hard, but at least you're in the right terrain.
I'm curious also, like how this work that you're doing now, how do you decide where that taste barrier is? Is it up front, you're selecting the problems? Is it when you get to the initial prototype? But what if you need to get a little bit further for it to work? How do you determine that? And also, how do you resource against it in terms of near-term things where it's like, oh yeah, we just got to do something, here we are in the present, versus thinking about the long-term investments you have to make?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you that we had a great system in place. The system is the intuition of the design team and the prototyping that they're doing to hone that intuition, and then the intuition of maybe me and Mark Zuckerberg and the product team saying where we think the real problems are, that if we solve those problems, somebody would buy this thing. And those two pieces come. It's very often we will design something that is awesome, but objectively doesn't solve any problem that anyone has. And you're like, okay, we're halfway there. Or like we come up with some amazing problem that if we could solve it, that'd be awesome, but it turns out we can't solve that problem. So finding the Venn diagram overlap is a huge help. But listen, when it comes to like our Orion AR headset that we launched last year, the design team, Josh's design team, they didn't get their hands on the actual platform until like 8 or 9 months before it shipped to ourselves internally into the demo. It's not enough time. So they're having to work in other platforms. They're having to like build these prototypes. And so I wish we don't have a great system for it, except to constantly build every prototype, explore every problem, and then user research. The way we got to the current paradigm that we've all been in, this application paradigm that all of us have only ever known our entire lives, the way we got there was user research. The Xerox PARC team, having inherited the computer mouse from Stanford Research Institute, was convinced that nobody would want to move their hands from the keyboard to the mouse. By the way, Doug Engelbart at Stanford Research Institute agreed, which is why he tried to replace the keyboard with the chord set, a single hand keyboard, which he's the only person I know of who ever actually learned how to use. So the engineering team, Chuck Thacker and Bob and these guys at Xerox PARC, they brought in the secretarial team who actually did the work of writing up documents and said, all right, and they taught them all the keyboard shortcuts so they could go between all these modal applications. And they taught them that and they were fluent. And then they showed them the mouse and they asked them, which one do you think is better? And they're like, oh, they're about the same. And they thought, we won. And then they watched them use it for the next hour and they only ever used the mouse. Like they never went back to the keyboard shortcuts. And like at some point, those are the things that do win arguments. It's like, oh, well, the humans who actually use this thing, who actually have the problems that we're trying to solve, have spoken. And so that is a super valuable discipline. It comes in late on a relative basis compared to what we're used to in mobile application or web application design. But getting it in the hands of people and like having them experience it in an honest fashion is a big part of it.
If we fast forward a bit and think about the far out, or maybe not so far out world of high bandwidth BCI, artificial super intelligence, beyond even AGI, how does the work you're doing now that your teams are engaging in, how will that map to that future?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine that future existing without the AI work of the kind that we're doing at Meta and lots of places, without the sensing work that we're doing, the compute work that we're doing in wearable computing, these kinds of things. The interaction designs, I'm not as convinced will have the longevity that the current paradigm has had. If the current paradigm has lasted from 1968 until today, I'm not sure the next paradigm will last an equivalent 60 years. But I think it'll be, in a 20-year time frame, I think it'll still be important. I think we'll still be getting a lot of visual, auditory feedback, human in the loop information about the world and the computing being done on our behalf. And you know, the bet that I think we're all making is that these tools enable humans to undertake even more ambitious and creative endeavors, as has been the case with every single tool invention in our species' history so far.
And maybe a far out question, but if you had the capability, would you upload?
I would. And for a completely hilarious reason. Like, you know, it's like, I think a lot of things change when you have kids. I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I want to be there to see what happens with them. I want to be as much a part of that as I can for as long as I can. And at some point, hopefully they have grandkids and I can be a part of that. So more than for my own sake, you know, maybe they just boot me up at Christmas and I check it out. But yeah, I probably would.
If you were in uploaded state, just curious, do you think you'd prefer an interface that's minimalist, maximalist, or data stream?
Oh, I want as little interface as I can get away with. You know, I want everything to just be completely seamless. Of course, it's easier said than done. But yeah, interfaces don't have intrinsic value, even as elegant or as beautiful as we make them. Like they're not the thing. The thing is the thing. So yeah, as minimal as I can get away with.
Minimal meaning data stream, or minimal means some affordance in an uploaded state?
Man,
we're projecting here.
We are really getting out there. I didn't prepare. It's a whole philosophy class up here. I would probably stream. Yeah, that's probably right.
Cool. Last question. We got a room of designers assembled here. What's one question that they should be thinking about as they head home tonight?
Yeah, I've hit on this so many times. I feel like I'm just a man with a hammer at this point. But I do think if I was in the audience today, if I'm trying to think about what does any of this mean, sure, spatial interfaces, artificial intelligence. David Foster Wallace gave this incredible speech a long time ago where he talked about there's two fish talking to each other, and an older fish comes by, and he says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" Swims off, and the fish turn to each other and says, "What the hell is water?" And the premise of this is we exist inside these paradigms that we've inherited, often without even realizing that they are paradigms, that they are man-made, and that they can be changed. And so if you've spent, like I did, the last 20 years designing websites and apps, it's like, what do you mean? Like design is websites and apps. Like that's what we're doing here now. And I think that, by the way, it wasn't just that. Like product design came into a very narrow space. Arguably architecture came into a very narrow space. And I think we're at a very cool, expansive period, and I just don't want anyone to miss it. Like if you're here, you're probably not gonna miss it, but like take the second to say like, hey, wait a second, is this even the right, for the problem I'm trying to solve, are the constraints that I'm working within real? Are those actually the constraints that or are those bendable? Are those malleable? Is there a way to step outside of those constraints? Because that is the really exciting frontier that I think we're on the precipice of unlocking.
Boz, thank you so much for joining us and talking about the frontier.
Thank you for having me. Thanks all.